Hello everyone, I am Sanket Singh. I'm working as a software engineer at Google and welcome back to my channel. So guys, you already know that in 2023, owning a skill is one of the most important things that you have to focus in building your career, right? You can already see there is a pretty tough competition going on in the software engineering market, that if you want to apply for a job, there has to be some certain set of skills that you need to know. And in order to resolve that particular problem, I have a great and a big announcement from our side for you guys. So I've been getting a lot of requests then when the front-end development course will come, when the front-end engineering course will come. And a lot of students have put a lot of queries who have actually attended my previous set of boot camps around in back-end development and interview preparation. And all of them were requesting that when can we expect a React.js and an advanced front-end development bootcamp. So this video, we are going to talk about that thing only. So yes, we are launching our brand new front-end development bootcamp in which we are going to cover everything from the basics to the very advanced front-end engineering in around 300 hours of content. Yes, there will be a whooping 300 hours of hybrid content. Yes, you can see that we have to cover a lot, and of course we have to do it in a certain amount of period. So we have kept it as a hybrid bootcamp. I'll talk about all of the details of the bootcamp in this particular video, so stay tuned till the last. If you actually ask about my own experience with front-end engineering, so I have worked as a front-end engineer multiple times. There were a bunch of internships that I worked as a front-end engineer. To be very honest, the first internship that I did was as a front-end engineering intern, where basically I worked with Angular. Later, I worked as a full-stack engineering intern. I also worked in Google Summer of Code, where I again worked as a full-stack developer with Meteor.js. Then I started working as an intern and then full-time at InterviewBit, where I was working with React.js based frontend. I was in the growth team and we worked on a lot of React.js based features on the website of Scalar and InterviewBit. Later, I joined LinkedIn as again a full-stack engineer, where I actually worked with Ember.js. And then now I'm currently working as a full stack engineer again at Google. We work with the front end of a mobile application, basically in Flutter, right? So you can see throughout my career, I have focused a lot of things around in front end engineering, right? And if you see the market of 2023, React.js is the one-stop solution that you should actually focus if you want to build a career in front end engineering. Front-end engineering is on a very high nowadays. There is a lot of demand of good, skilled, knowledgeable engineers who can write great front ends. And that's going to be the target of this particular cohort. In this 6 to 7 month cohort, we are going to see everything from scratch, but not to a beginner level or intermediate level, but we'll start from a beginner level and leave you at a very advanced level of front-end engineering. There's going to be a lot of things going to be discussed. We'll talk about React, we'll talk about Redux toolkit, we'll see TypeScript, Next.js, GraphQL, advanced JavaScript, advanced CSS. We'll be having more than 20 mini projects, more than 5 major projects, and 2 Capstone projects as well. So this is going to be one of those courses where you are not going to see a lot of monotonicity in terms of the content. You're going to be regularly building stuff in both recorded as well as live format. So a lot of details I have to share about the course. But before going into all of the details, let's take a deep dive into the curriculum. I have designed one of the, I would say, best industry ready curriculum. I have kept things in mind that if you join as a front-end engineer somewhere, most of the time you might not be just directly creating a brand new project. You will be working on some legacy code base as well as some new projects as well. So this cohort is going to keep both of the things in mind, that you know everything about React and the upcoming things coming inside React. Apart from that, for the interview preparation part of frontend, you will already see there is very less content on the internet. So in this particular course, I have curated that particular thing as well. So a lot of exciting things are going to come up in this course. Stay tuned till the very last of the video if you want to know all of the details of this particular course. And if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, do consider subscribing to the channel. We are going to put some really awesome notifications about that. That being said, without any further delay, let's just take a deep dive in what all things we are going to teach in the course. So here you can see this is the curriculum that I have prepared. If I'll just zoom out, you will see There's a hell lot to discuss that we are going to actually cover in the course. So without any further delay, let's just take a deep dive. So this is the curriculum that we have prepared for the advanced front end with React. Now, when I say front end, then of course I just don't mean that we'll start making components, start talking about props and everything, but instead we'll talk from the very basics of front end, right? I will talk about, like, in case if you are someone who has never done programming or have very less experience with programming, then also I have made sure that we will curate a course accordingly to that. So I'll keep a very basics of programming refresher, and this will be mainly with JavaScript, right? So this is going to be mainly with JavaScript, right? Quick programming refresher we are going to keep so that you can understand basics of if else loops and everything. This is going to be kind of like an optional thing. If you want to cover it, you can. Otherwise, this is going to be pretty optional for everyone, right? Apart from that, we'll start with basics of front-end development. We'll understand what is the regular day-to-day work of a front-end engineer, how things work. Then before we actually start with HTML, CSS and everything, I will talk about computer networks. Now, why is that? Because if you have even a bare minimum experience with front end and HTML, you might have heard about forms. Now, you'll find a lot of people talking about forms, things like method of post, get, and all of those things without actually giving somebody context about what is HTTP, what are HTTP methods and everything. I don't want that. So I will make sure that our computer networks concepts are really good. If you're someone who has already attended any of my previous boot camps, then of course this concepts must be already very good with all of you guys. But in case you have never done that, there will be a dedicated computer network section that you have to cover. After that, we'll start with HTML, right? In HTML, we are going to talk about basics of HTML, like some basic tags, basic properties, basic attributes. I'll talk about semantic HTML, that is pretty important for you to write cleaner HTML code. We'll talk about HTML forms and how you can build forms, what are the different input types you can actually put. We'll talk about DOM, document object model, how DOM actually works, and we'll make a slightly mini project, kind of like a registration form, something, right, with HTML. And after all of that, there will be some takeaway assignment for you to prepare some basic HTML pages. Now then comes the kind of important part that a lot of people don't feel very comfortable with, although they'll have good amount of knowledge, but still when they actually start working on front end, CSS is something that scares the shit out of people. So we have curated the CSS content in a manner that it will take you from very basic to an extremely advanced level, right? We'll talk about basics of CSS, right? We'll see basic CSS properties. I've just listed a few of them. There will be definitely tons and tons of properties that we are going to talk about. Then we'll have a dedicated part where we will talk about selectors. We'll talk about universal selector, tag selector, ID selector, class selector, right? We are going to also talk about some advanced selectors and combinators like descendant combinator, child combinator, adjacent sibling combinator, general sibling combinator. All of these things we are going to cover. We are going to talk about pseudo elements like before and after. We'll talk about pseudo classes like first child, nth child, last child, and these kind of pseudo classes. Then we'll talk about some advanced CSS concepts, right? We'll talk about the box model, very important part. When you're actually styling your page, if you have not good understanding of box model, then you are bound to make mistakes, right? So we'll talk about things around margin, padding, border. We'll talk about the two box models that CSS currently supports, border box and content box. We'll talk about width and height, and we will see how exactly the box inside CSS works, which part is padding, which part is margin, with which particular type of mode we will get margin and padding included. All of those things we'll talk about. Then very important, Flexbox. Without Flexbox you cannot stand a chance in any CSS work. So we'll talk about directions, wraps, flows, axis, contents, align items, and using Flexbox we are going to make a hell lot of projects as well. We'll also talk about CSS variables so that we can keep the overall code as clean as possible, right? Apart from that, I will also talk about animations in CSS. Yes, animation is pretty important. We'll talk about transformation, we'll talk about transitions, keyframes, and we'll make kind of like a project of making a multiple type of loaders. We'll take any kind of loader into example and we'll try to make it as close as possible, right? So this is going to be a fun exercise to do with animations. Then a dedicated project we are going to keep for parallax, because parallax based websites are awesome to see, right? They are very soothing, they give good impact on your resume as well. So we are going to keep a dedicated project for a parallax website. We are also going to talk about responsive CSS using media queries. We'll try to make our websites responsive. There will be dedicated projects that we are going to keep, like we'll make a simple portfolio, we'll make progress bars, we'll kind of like try to make a tweet like UI, we'll make things like accordion and different more type of CSS components we are going to actually build that you will find yourself also building multiple times, right? One more important thing that we are going to talk about in advanced CSS here is going to be cascading. Let me write it here. So we will talk about cascading as well. We'll talk about the cascading algorithm. We'll see how exactly cascading works, when which type of CSS will be given preference. We'll also talk about how to can you write different type of CSS like inline CSS, CSS in a different file, in the style tag. All of these things, of course, the basic things are going to be there. Apart from that, these are going to be some pretty advanced stuff. Like making loaders is going to be a pretty good exercise. I'm really excited for that. Then we are going to talk about, of course, the much hyped Bootstrap, and we'll try to learn Bootstrap with kind of like a project based example. We are going to make a e-commerce app. We'll make different pages of e-commerce app using Bootstrap, right? We'll also make one calculator kind of an application here. We'll also make one calculator kind of an application, right? But that's going to be more or less for a practice. This is going to give you a better exposure around the e-commerce app, right? This is going to be the part of the basic of front end. Now comes advanced front end part. So we'll start with DOM manipulation, right? You can see a lot of things we have to cover in DOM manipulation. We'll talk about when should you load your scripts. Should you load it at the top of the page, at the bottom of the page? We'll talk about async load or defer based load. We'll talk about all of these things. We'll talk about the document object. We'll see different methods available in the document object. One, we'll talk about different optimizations, like should you use inner text or you should use inner HTML or you should use text content, which is more efficient. All of these things we are going to talk about. We'll talk about BOM. Apart from this DOM part, we'll also talk about BOM, that is a browser object model. We'll see a few things around window object. We'll make a very cool to-do application, a full-fledged working to-do application with plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? We'll try to make some games. I love making games with JavaScript. So we'll make a ping pong game project and a space shooter game as well. I'll give you some more assignments to prepare some more games, but this is something that we are going to build in class. We'll see how you can make network calls using fetch API, using Exaios library. We'll talk about XML HTTP request that internally is getting used there. And the e-commerce front end that we built using Bootstrap, we are going to integrate that front end with a fake store API, right? And we'll try to make network calls and actually see some actual content coming in the e-commerce app. We'll talk about the events, what is event bubbling, what is event delegation, what is event capture, and there will be more advanced DOM manipulation related concept that are going to come up ahead. That is going to be extremely important for you to understand how exactly things work in DOM, right? Then there will be a part of advanced JS. And if you are already someone who has been part of my previous cohorts, then this thing should be pretty sorted for you already. But if you were not, then we'll talk about extreme advanced coercion, advanced scopes, closure, callbacks, promises, iterator generator. Then we'll talk about async await. We'll talk about objects and classes and prototypes. This part is going to be pretty heavy on your brain if you have never even like took a very deep dive here. But I wanted to keep it because I don't want to create front-end engineers who don't even have knowledge of JavaScript. Because trust me on one simple thing that if you're going for a front-end engineering interview, a very big part, maybe around 40 to 50% of the part is going to be on core knowledge of JavaScript. So this is pretty important. This is like the very, very important part, right? Then we are going to start also with Node because a slight amount of knowledge of Node will be required for later upcoming projects, and also to set up things in React, that how exactly React works for like importing some modules in React. We need some knowledge of Node. Of course, this is not going to be very in-depth backend. I will just explain the Node runtime and a few features of the Node runtime. Then we are going to start with React, and you can see we have a lot to cover in React. So we'll start with components, functional component, class components, and we'll be having major discussion around functional components that are pretty relevant now. We'll talk about JSX, its curlies, rendering list. We'll talk about props. We'll talk about key prop. We'll talk about React Profiler, that how you can make your React app efficient. In order to do that, you need to actually understand what's going wrong. React Profiler will help you to do that. We'll make a simple Twitter application and see things with React Profiler, and then even optimize it using a bunch of hooks. So we'll have a dedicated section of hooks that we are going to cover, like use state, use effect, use memo, use callback, use ref. And using use ref, we are also going to make a countdown application mini project. right? We'll talk about states in depth using use state. How do you manage use states? We'll see some pretty advanced cases of use state, that if let's say there are multiple state updates, do you do what will happen in that case, and so on. There will be a tic-tac-toe project that we are going to build, right? And here we are going to do some optimization to this tic-tac-toe project using use memo and use callbacks, right? Then we'll talk about context API, very important, very famous, and one of the most cool features in the latest versions of React. So that how can you avoid prop dealing with context API, and how you can integrate context API in your projects. Here we are going to talk about the hook use context, right? So we'll talk about the hook. Just a second. We'll talk about use context right here in order to integrate context API with our projects. We'll also talk about router, and we'll use the React router library so that you understand how you can navigate to different pages. So React is for single page application development. So in single page application also, you might have to navigate through pages. How do you do that without refreshing stuff? We'll talk about that. There's a very interesting library that is going to make your life pretty easy. That is React Query. It will help you to cache a lot of data. It will help you to make all of those network requests and then cache it, and retry mechanisms. All of these things are actually included in React Query. We'll talk about React Query. We'll make a kind of like a major project of social media application. We will be using a bunch of APIs, and we'll try to make a social media application. And this is where we are going to actually start with material UI as well. So yes, apart from Bootstrap, I am also going to cover MUI, right? It will be again a project driven learning, that we will try to make our project. We will see, okay, what all things are there with MUI already, and then we will inherit them. So that will give you good amount of exposure with MUI as well. Then we are going to talk about forms in React. We'll talk about controlled and uncontrolled components. How do they work? Then we'll try to create our forms with refs. Then we are going to use a library React hook form. We will learn about it and try to make a multi-step form. Multi-step form means, like, if you have ever signed up to Google or Gmail, right? Then you write your first name, last name, you click on next. Then the next part of the form comes. Then you click on next. Next part of the form works. And then finally, when you submit, everything goes to the backend, right? So that kind of a multi-step form we will try to prepare, and we will prepare a similar project around it using React hook forms. Then we will try to introduce reducers, that why reducer methods are important. We'll talk about what are the advantages of introducing reducers in your React application, right? This is not Redux, just telling, it is the use reducer hook that we are going to talk about. We'll make a mini project of shopping list using use reducer, and we will also integrate our context API with use reducer so that we have an end-to-end state management solution that is given by React by default. Then after that, we'll also talk about advanced React. We'll talk about code splitting. We'll talk about lazy loading. We'll have a very in-depth discussion on the reconciliation algorithm. We'll try to implement debouncing and throttling. And using that, we are also going to make a mini project of a movie search application. We'll use the OMDB API for that. We'll talk about use layout effect hook. We'll talk about suspense and portals. We'll try to make models around it, right? We'll also see how you can do testing in your front-end components in using different mechanisms. We'll talk about build tools like White. We'll talk about error boundaries and fiber. So this is going to be a pretty advanced section that we are going to cover. Post that, we are going to start with Redux. So at least in my time when I was in college, Redux was something that not a lot of people used to understand because of the complexity it introduces and a lot of function it introduces. So for that, we'll start with Redux core. We will see all of the basic set of 5 functions that Redux provides, and then some other internal functions that a bunch of functions provide. Once we are done with Redux core, that is compose, create store, bind action creator, combine reducer, and apply middleware, we'll see some more concepts of Redux like enhancers, right? We'll see that how Redux DevTools can be integrated as an enhancer, right? We'll see that how you can convert your normal actions to action creators, right? How can you introduce multiple reducers and then use combined reducer to combine those multiple reducer into one? How will you finally do state management with Redux? And we will talk about the very famous library called as react-redux. So we'll see how will you do state management in the React application using react-redux, right? Then we will also talk about the brand new Redux toolkit. With Redux toolkit, we'll talk about slices, that how slices work and make all of your managed code of Redux just into a single slice. Very, very cool. We'll talk about immer.js, the internal library that Redux toolkit actually uses for making sure that you are able to mutate some immutables. We'll talk about immer.js as well. We'll see the use dispatch and use selector hook. in order to use the things around with Redux toolkit, right? And this use dispatch and use selector is actually available inside React Redux, and we'll see how Redux toolkit also comes into the picture. Then for dispatching asynchronous action, we have the brand new, like I won't say brand new, it's a famous one, Redux Thunks, and the brand new read RTK query that can actually help you to do caching and everything around with your network requests. So these two are going to be pretty fun to actually understand, and we'll get some good context about it when we will actually try to prepare our movie search application, right? Then we are also going to introduce GraphQL. Yes, so understanding and having good knowledge about GraphQL is pretty important. In my backend cohorts, I used to do REST along with gRPC, but here I felt like there will be a lot of REST APIs already. Why not also talk about GraphQL? So we'll see how to set up Apollo servers. We'll see types and queries along with their mutations. We'll see type definitions. We'll try to prepare a kind of like a login system, and we'll understand things about resolvers. I will also introduce, apart from Bootstrap and MUI, you might already aware about the buzzword Tailwind. Yes, we'll talk about Tailwind as well, and we'll try to make a mini project using Tailwind. Then the much hyped Next.js. So if you are going to work in a new startup and you are going to prepare brand new front-end projects, most probably you might be using Next.js. So we'll be learning the concepts of rendering inside Next.js. How do you do routing and route grouping? How do you fetch data? How do you write APIs? How do you connect to the database? All of these things we are going to learn inside Next.js also. And of course, a project dedicated with Next.js. Then a pretty interesting part of design patterns with React that is going to help you in your I would say senior software engineering interviews for frontend as well. We'll talk about render props. We'll talk about higher order components. We'll talk about the hooks pattern. We'll talk about providers, and this is important. Here we are going to build more than 15 custom hooks ourselves. Yes, I'll try to help you make more than 15 custom hooks, not the inbuilt one, but custom hooks as well. And the knowledge of custom hooks I'll already give you initially during the introduction to React, but later we will make some pretty interesting custom hooks. I'll talk about that. This is one of the most exciting part of the course. Right, we'll also talk about containers and give you knowledge about Docker. Right, we'll see how can you do your front-end application deployment with CI/CD. Apart from that, now in all of this, during learning of all of this, there will be a lot of mini projects. So approximately that we counted, there were approximately around 20 mini projects that we are going to build while learning. So you will never face the fatigue of just keeping on learning. You will be actually building stuff and actually seeing, okay, what's actually going on. Apart from that, there will be dedicated major projects. What are these major projects? They are going to combine a bunch of knowledge together and make an end-to-end application that you can definitely put in your resume. Even the mini projects you can put, like for example, the games. In the major projects, there will be a Goodreads clone that we are going to create with React. We are going to create an e-commerce app with React. We are going to use our pre-prepared e-commerce app. We'll use the stylings from there and migrate it to React. We'll make a movie booking application with React. After the knowledge of our DOM manipulation, we'll try to make a drawing board application so that people can actually draw on the browser. We are going to make a CRM app and a social media app. We'll already talked about this. But that's not it. That's not it. There will be a Capstone project as well. That will be a bit harder, on the bit harder end. And at the very end of the course, we are going to do the Capstone projects. We will try to make a video streaming app. So we'll use the Node.js streaming capabilities and React.js together in order to try to prepare a streaming application altogether. And we are also going to make a video calling app along with chat support using WebRTC and Socket. So this is going to be like the end game in the course, that after all of our knowledge, whatever we inculcated, this is what we are going to build. Right, we'll also have a bonus section on optimizing your web application. We'll talk about a lot of techniques that you might have to use when you actually join as a front-end engineer somewhere in order to optimize the application. And you can see this is a pretty power-packed course, right? That's why we need a hell lot of time. I'll talk about more details of the course, but I believe this must have given you goosebumps that all of these things we are going to talk about. You can see even in the major projects, there are more than 5 major projects that we have already decided, and there will be a bunch of more that we will include during the progression of the course, that looking at how the batch actually works. So there will be more than 5 major projects, at least 2 capstone projects, and more than 20 mini projects. So it's going to be a power packed course. There won't be a JavaScript fatigue, or there won't be a React fatigue inside you, because whenever we will be learning something, we will be building something, right? There will be a lot of time when we will be doing a lot of to-do list related stuff, so don't worry on that. But we'll be later building a lot of applications with whatever we have learned. And this course has to make sure that your actual, I would say, fear of front end, like writing good css, writing good react, making good folder structure, is actually out of the place, right? uh, a lot of time people do learn front end, but they don't know how to write cleaner code, how to maintain their repository well, right? How to make sure that your builds are fast. All of these things we are going to talk about. I am super excited for the course. Now let me talk through about the details of the course. That whether the course, like how, what will be the delivery process of the course, what will be the language, right? What's the start date of the course, what is the price? Let's talk about all of this now. So you can see this is the actual page where you can actually go and purchase the front end development with React.js bootcamp course, right? You can see we have very humbly priced it at 5,500 rupees, and you can see we are going to give 500 days of access. You might ask me why not just complete 2 years, because I feel that if you can't complete a course in maybe 1 year, maybe due to some reasons, exams, or maybe your office reviews or something, you might need some more time. But if you can't do something in 500 days, then of course you won't be able to actually complete. Doesn't matter how much time I give you. So just to make sure that you have a tight deadline with you, and because we have to cover a lot, we have kept it as a validity of 500 days, right? And the overall cost that we have kept is 5,500. But there is a discount for all of you guys. You can use the coupon code front 700, FRONT 700. I will give this discount coupon code in the description section as well. And you can get a whopping 700 rupees discount flat on this course price, right? And you can see the overall costing that you will actually get is going to reduce a lot, approximately even less than rupees 10 per day. But I generally don't believe that anything that you are going to invest for yourself for 500 days, you should try to evaluate it like, okay, per day how much it costed you. You should actually see what is the actual outcome. You should always work for an outcome driven learning, that if you attend a certain amount of bootcamp, what will you eventually become, what kind of engineer you are going to become. That should be your agenda. You can see all of the course details I have already given here. Apart from that, there are 2 to 3 bonus part that I have added that I didn't discuss about earlier in the roadmap part, right? One is I have added Redux Saga as well in the course curriculum. Apart from that, I have added a bonus section where you will be able to actually try to understand how to track user impressions in React. Whenever you will actually go to a company and actually make a feature, it's never going to be the fact that you just made a feature and just rolled it out and you are happy. You have to actually track that how your users are actually interacting with that particular feature. That's why I'm going to also tell you about how you can actually interact with users, how you can track user interactions and everything. This is going to be an extremely fun part. Apart from that, one more bonus content that I have added is going to be an additional lecture on micro frontends. We are going to see an introduction to micro frontends as well, right? There will be live classes that we are going to keep. So this is, as I said, it's going to be a hybrid course. We're going to start the course on 30th of September, right? It's going to be a hybrid course. Every week there will be one live class. That live class will be either on a weekend or a weekday. That will be also defined dates. You can actually find that in the FAQ section of the course below, right? Why we have kept either weekend or weekday, why not something defined? Because it's a festive season coming up. A lot of festivals are going to be there on the weekend, so I don't want to hamper your learning experience. That means if this course is going to be at least going to go for 6 months at least. So if you go by calculation, 24 to 25 live classes also will be there. So 75 hours of live content also you are going to get, apart from all of this 300 hours of content that we are actually giving you. So it's a hell lot of content that you have to consume. In the live classes, we are going to talk no nonsense shit. We are going to either build something, we will be building some projects, or we will be learning some advanced front end concept, maybe some front end design, some front end system design, or maybe some advanced React related concepts or something. Third thing is we are also going to take our problem solving around front end interviews. How front end interviews are going to be conducted. We are going to take a lot of problems around front end engineering interviews. For example, maybe we can solve some problems of preparing some polyfills, right? Or maybe we can solve some problems of preparing some CSS or React based components, right? So we are also going to do front end engineering problem solving in these live classes. So it's going to be a fun ride. Trust me. I know you might feel, okay, 6 months is a long time, but as I said, I have to cover a lot. I don't want to keep this course hollow. That's why I have kept it the most power packed and the most impactful front end development course. So this is the course. You can find the link. You can see this is the link, but you can find the link in the description section also below. Use the code FRONT700 to get a whooping 700 rupees off, right? I know you guys have shown tremendous amount of love to my previous backend cohorts. This cohort also, I expect that you're going to support again. And one more thing, who will be the instructors? I am going to be the sole instructor, 100% of the live classes as well as the recording, everything end to end. I am going to teach, right? There will be dedicated teaching assistants who will actually help you. There will be a separate Discord community that will be private to only those people who are going to access the course, right? Apart from that, you are going to get course certificate as well. Yes, we have included a course certificate also, although I'm not in a lot of favor of like certificates, but yes, a lot of people actually demand it. So we have kept course certification as well that you are going to get in this course. So you can see it's a complete end-to-end thing. I would highly recommend you guys to go through the FAQ section. You can see at the end you will get to know about the course. You will get to know about the author, that is the educator. I am going to be the only one who is going to teach everything in the course. And you can see there is a bunch of FAQs also we have put. So go through the FAQs. All of your doubts are going to be cleared. If you want to go through the content, you can see everything that I already talked in the video. You can again go through that, or you can actually see the whole list of lectures that I have already put. It's going to be a fun ride. I expect you guys to like do give it a shot if you are interested in front end development, right? So that's it for this particular video. I don't want to stretch it too long. Go through it. Give me your reviews. Give me your feedbacks. I would love to hear your feedbacks in the comment section below. Do let me know if there is something that you want me to include in the front end development bootcamp. I will definitely try to actually accommodate that if possible. That being said, let's wrap this particular video here. We are going to meet soon in the next set of videos. Till then, take care, guys. Bye bye. I am Sanket Singh, signing off.